There is something that happens to you every single night. Something quiet and ordinary. Something so familiar that you have probably never stopped to think about it very carefully. You lie down. You close your eyes. The room gets dark. The sounds of the day begin to fall away. And then, somehow, without meaning to, your mind gets louder. Not louder in a way you can measure with any instrument. Not louder in any way that another person in the room would notice. But louder in the way that a thought you barely registered during the day suddenly feels like it deserves your full attention. Louder in the way that an old memory arrives uninvited and sits with you for a while before drifting off. Louder in the way that the strange texture of silence itself seems to press gently against you, asking you to pay attention to it, as though it contains something you have been missing. If you have ever lain awake in the dark and wondered why this is, why the quiet hours seem so much more populated with thought than the busy hours, why the brain that spent the whole day rushing from one task to the next now refuses to simply rest, you are in the right place tonight. Tonight, we are going to take a very slow, very thorough walk through the neuroscience of this experience. We are going to talk about what your brain actually does when the world around you goes still. We are going to explore a remarkable network of brain regions that activates the moment your attention stops pointing outward. We are going to look at why the darkness seems to bring certain thoughts closer to the surface, why the night has a particular emotional texture that the day does not have, and why the experience of lying in silence before sleep is so much more interesting and so much less empty than it might initially seem. And woven through all of this science, there will be plenty of quiet, plenty of space for the explanations to simply float through you, for the ideas to come and go without leaving much of a trace, for your body to gradually find its way toward rest. You do not need to remember any of this. You do not need to follow along carefully or take notes. Everything that is said tonight can be received the way you might receive the sound of rain on a window. You can hear it without really listening to it, and it can be company without demanding anything. Take a breath now, a slow one. Let your shoulders drop a little lower than they were. Let the muscles at the base of your skull soften slightly, the ones you did not realize were holding any tension. Let the breath go and take another one and let that one go too. The room is quiet. The night is outside, and we can begin. The first thing to understand about the experience of silence at night is that silence is not, from the perspective of your brain, actually silent. This sounds paradoxical, but it is supported by some genuinely interesting neuroscience. When researchers at Johns Hopkins University studied how people perceive the absence of sound, they found something that challenged a long-held assumption about auditory processing. They discovered that the brain does not treat silence as the absence of input. It treats silence as a category of input in itself. Silence is perceived. It has duration, quality, intensity. It can feel short or long, comfortable or uncomfortable, full or empty. In one of their experiments, the researchers presented study participants with a series of sound-based auditory illusions, classic perceptual illusions where a sound seems to last longer or shorter than it actually does, depending on what surrounds it. These illusions have been well documented in auditory science for decades. But then the researchers did something clever. They designed equivalent versions of the same illusions based on silence rather than sound. They created gaps in an ongoing acoustic scene where one of the sounds would stop, producing a brief moment of relative quiet, and asked participants to judge the duration of that gap. The remarkable finding was that the silence-based illusions worked just as well as the sound-based ones. People experienced the gaps as longer or shorter depending on the same contextual factors that distorted their perception of actual sounds. The brain was applying its sound processing machinery to the experience of absence. Silence, at the level of neural processing, is not nothing. It is a kind of sensory event in itself. This tells us something important about why the quiet of the nighttime bedroom never quite feels truly empty. Your brain is not passively registering an absence of stimulation. It is actively processing the quiet, attending to it, interpreting it. The auditory cortex, nestled in the temporal lobe, does not go dark when the sounds stop. Research has shown that it remains active, scanning, attending, and in some cases producing its own signals to fill the space where external input would normally be. A paper published in the Journal of Neuroscience in 2006 found something particularly striking about this. When researchers asked participants to listen for a sound that might emerge from silence, when they were in a state of actively waiting and scanning a quiet acoustic environment, the superior temporal cortex showed robust activation. The auditory brain was firing, not in response to sound, but in response to the possibility of sound, in response to the act of listening itself. This is one of the reasons why lying in a quiet room at night can feel unexpectedly activating rather than simply restful. Your auditory system is not in standby mode. It is in a state of readiness, scanning the acoustic field, looking for what might arrive. The silence is not something your brain is ignoring. It is something your brain is actively processing. There is a phenomenon called auditory gain that helps explain another piece of this. Auditory gain refers to the brain's tendency to increase the sensitivity of its auditory processing circuits when external sound is low or absent. Think of it as a form of automatic compensation. When the signal that comes in from the outside world drops below a certain level, the brain turns up the gain on its receiving system to make sure it does not miss anything important. This is why, in a very quiet room at night, you become more aware of sounds that were always there but that you were not processing before. The faint hiss of the ventilation system, the tiny creak of the building settling, the sound of your own breathing, which suddenly seems closer and louder than it was an hour ago. The soft rushing sound near your ears, which is the sound of blood moving through the vessels in your head. These sounds are present during the day too. You simply have more than enough incoming sensory information during the day to keep your auditory system fully occupied with external content, and so these quieter internal signals never make it to your conscious awareness. At night, with the external environment quieted, the brain has turned up the dial, and so the small sounds that were always there become audible. The internal world becomes louder. The private sounds of the body make themselves known. And this principle, that reduced external stimulation leads to increased internal sensitivity, applies broadly to the way the brain works, not just in the auditory domain. When the steady, demanding stream of sensory information from the outside world slows to a trickle, the brain's inward-directed processes have more access to consciousness. The thoughts that were there all along, the emotions that were brewing under the surface, the memories and concerns and half-formed plans, all of them get a kind of automatic amplification when the competition from external stimuli decreases. This is the first and simplest part of why silence feels loud. Your brain is designed to compensate for quiet by becoming more sensitive to what remains. Now let your body soften a little more with each breath you take. You do not need to do this actively. You do not need to tense and release your muscles deliberately. Just let the awareness of your body travel down from your head to your shoulders, from your shoulders to your chest and back, from there to your stomach and hips, and all the way down through your legs and into your feet. And notice, without trying to change anything, where the body is holding itself unnecessarily. The muscles of the face are often the last to be mentioned but the first to register stress. The small muscles around the eyes, the muscles of the forehead, the muscles at the corners of the jaw, which can hold tension for hours without you ever noticing. Let those muscles release gradually without forcing anything. The breath continues, quiet and steady. Let us talk now about a network of brain regions that is central to this entire story. A network that has fascinated neuroscientists for more than 2 decades, that is connected to nearly everything we experience in the quiet of the evening, and that is responsible for much of what makes the nighttime mind feel the way it does. It is called the default mode network. The story of how the default mode network was discovered is itself a good illustration of how science sometimes stumbles into its most important findings while looking for something else. For much of the 20th century, neuroscientists operated under a working assumption about the brain at rest. The assumption was that the resting brain was a relatively quiet brain. The thinking went something like this: the brain is largely a response system, a processing system that becomes active when there are things to process and goes into a kind of standby mode when there are not. The activity seen in brain scans during task performance was the important activity. The activity during rest was just background noise, metabolic housekeeping, nothing particularly meaningful. Hans Berger, the German neuropsychiatrist who invented the electroencephalogram in 1929, was one of the first to challenge this view. His recordings showed that brain electrical activity does not simply stop when a person sits quietly with their eyes closed. There is always something happening. But at the time, most of the field did not know quite what to do with this observation, and it was largely set aside. It was not until the 1990s, with the widespread use of positron emission tomography and then functional magnetic resonance imaging, that researchers began to get a clear picture of what was happening in the brain during rest. And what they found was genuinely surprising. When researchers measured brain activity during rest, when they asked subjects to lie still in the scanner and not do anything in particular, they found consistent, robust, organized activity in specific regions of the brain. These regions were not randomly active. They were active together in a coordinated pattern, as though they were components of a functioning system. And crucially, they were the same regions across different subjects in different scanners in different laboratories in different countries. This was something reliable and real. Marcus Raichle, a neurologist at Washington University in St. Louis, and his colleagues were among those who worked most systematically to characterize this pattern. In 2001, Raichle coined the term default mode network to describe this system, calling it the default because it appeared to represent the brain's resting or default state, the activity it returns to when it is not occupied with specific external tasks. His research and the explosion of subsequent work it inspired eventually showed something that upended the old assumption entirely. The brain's energy consumption does not drop significantly when a person transitions from focused, demanding work to quiet rest. Later experiments by Raichle's laboratory showed that the brain's baseline energy consumption is increased by less than 5% while performing a focused cognitive task. The brain is always doing something, and it is doing something substantial. The resting brain is not a quiet brain. It is a different kind of active brain. What the default mode network is doing, researchers have come to understand, is the inner work of being a person. The network includes several regions. The medial prefrontal cortex is involved in self-referential thinking, thinking about yourself, your characteristics, your values, your identity. The posterior cingulate cortex and precuneus are involved in self-reflection and the retrieval of autobiographical memories. The angular gyrus plays a role in connecting different kinds of information and in social cognition. The hippocampus, which we will come back to in some detail, is closely linked to the network and contributes its memory functions. Together, these regions and others, because the network is larger and more complex than any simple summary can capture, are active when you are thinking about the past. They are active when you are imagining the future. They are active when you are thinking about other people and trying to understand their perspectives. They are active when you are daydreaming. They are active when you are reflecting on who you are and what your life means. They are active, in other words, when you are doing the things that are most distinctively and deeply human. And they are most active when you are not focused on the external world. There is a well-documented and robust inverse relationship between the default mode network and what researchers call the task-positive network or dorsal attention network, the set of brain regions that become active when you are focused and engaged with external tasks. When one of these systems is active, the other tends to be suppressed. They are, in a functional sense, opponents. The brain shifts resources between them depending on whether its attention is oriented inward or outward. This means that any time you are externally focused, working, talking to someone, watching something, reading, doing anything that demands your active attention, the default mode network is being held back. The inward-directed processing is suppressed by the competition from outward-directed activity. And at night, when the external demands finally fall away, the default mode network no longer has competition. The task-positive network has nothing to do. The arousal system is beginning to wind down, and the default mode network expands into the space that has been cleared for it. This expansion is the neuroscience of nighttime thinking. It is the reason why your mind fills with memories and half-formed thoughts and emotional processing when you lie down in the dark. It is the reason why the quiet seems loud. The network that runs your inner life has finally, after a long day of being partially suppressed, been given room to do what it does. Take a slow breath here. Let the air fill the lower part of your lungs before it fills the upper part. Let your belly expand before your chest does. This is diaphragmatic breathing, the kind associated with the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and restore mode that is the biological opposite of the fight or flight response. Each slow, full breath is a small signal to your nervous system, a message that the situation is safe, that vigilance can decrease, that the body can begin to settle. Breathe in fully, slowly. Breathe out a little longer, a little more completely. When the default mode network runs freely in the evenings, one of the most consistent things it produces is what researchers call autobiographical memory retrieval. This is the process by which memories from your own life, specific events, faces, conversations, places, moments, drift into your awareness without you deliberately trying to recall them. They simply appear. They float up from somewhere below conscious intention, and for a while they are there, vivid and specific and entirely uninvited. You know this experience. You have had it thousands of times. You are lying in the dark and suddenly you are remembering a conversation from 3 weeks ago, or a particular afternoon from years past that has no obvious reason for arriving now, or the face of someone you have not thought about in months, or a moment of embarrassment so old that it should have lost its ability to produce any feeling, and yet it still manages a small sting. These arrivals are not random. They are the product of a system that is working, not wandering. The default mode network and the hippocampus are deeply intertwined. The hippocampus is the brain structure most central to the formation and retrieval of episodic memories. Memories of specific events in your life, tagged with the context of when and where they happened. Functional neuroimaging studies have consistently shown significant overlap between the brain regions that are active during autobiographical memory retrieval and the regions that make up the default mode network. The overlap is so substantial that some researchers have suggested the default mode network and the memory retrieval system are not really separate networks at all. They are the same system viewed from different angles, serving a common purpose of constructing and maintaining the narrative of the self. And there is a particular reason why the hippocampus is so active during the quiet hours of the evening, a reason that has to do with one of the most important jobs the brain does every single night. The hippocampus has a job that can only be done offline, that is, when the brain is not actively encoding new experiences. During the day, as you move through your life, the hippocampus acts as a rapid encoder. It captures the events and conversations and emotional moments of your experience with a kind of urgency, logging them as they happen. But these initial encodings are not yet permanent. They are not yet fully integrated into your long-term memory. They are held in a kind of temporary storage, waiting to be processed more thoroughly and transferred to more stable and permanent representations elsewhere in the brain. The processing happens during quiet rest and, most importantly, during sleep. This is the process of memory consolidation, and it involves the hippocampus replaying recently encoded neural firing patterns so that the information can be transferred to and integrated with long-term storage in the neocortex. Researchers studying this process in animals have been able to record the activity of individual hippocampal neurons as an animal explores a new environment, and then record those same neurons again while the animal subsequently sleeps. What they find is that the neurons fire again during sleep in the same sequences in which they fired during the original experience, but on a compressed timescale. The brain is literally replaying what happened. The memory is being rehearsed, reconsolidated, and woven more deeply into the fabric of long-term storage. In humans, the evidence for this process is somewhat less direct but no less compelling. Neuroimaging studies have found that brain regions engaged during learning are reactivated during subsequent sleep. People who sleep after learning new material remember it significantly better than people who remain awake. And disrupting the specific sleep stages most associated with memory consolidation impairs learning in predictable and measurable ways. Research published in Nature Neuroscience describing these mechanisms shows that during slow-wave sleep, hippocampal sharp-wave ripples coordinate with thalamic sleep spindles and cortical slow oscillations, three distinct types of brain activity nested within each other, to transfer newly encoded memories from the hippocampus to the neocortex. This coordination is precise and elegant. The hippocampal sharp-wave ripple provides the replay of the memory content. The sleep spindle provides a window of heightened cortical excitability for receiving that content, and the slow oscillation provides the timing framework that coordinates the whole process. It is a beautifully organized mechanism that operates entirely outside of conscious awareness, every night, in every brain that sleeps. All of this work, the replaying, the reconsolidating, the integrating of new experience with old, begins during the quiet pre-sleep period. As the day ends and the brain begins its transition toward rest, the hippocampus starts doing what it does. It begins moving through what has been accumulated. It starts to surface memories and process them. This is why, in the early part of the night before sleep comes, your thoughts so often seem to gather around the day that has just passed. A conversation replays. A moment of frustration surfaces. Something you said to someone or something someone said to you. Something you are looking forward to or something you are still working out how to feel about. This is consolidation in its early stages. Your brain is doing what it does every night. You are simply, in these quiet moments before sleep, briefly conscious of it. The breath is slow. The room is still. Whatever thoughts are moving through you right now, let them move. You do not have to hold them or analyze them or judge them. They are part of the process, part of the quiet work the brain is doing, and they can be allowed to pass through without leaving anything behind. There is another dimension to what the nighttime default mode network produces, one that is important to understand clearly because it connects directly to the experience so many people have of feeling worse about their lives and their circumstances at night than they do during the day. The default mode network, when it activates during quiet rest, has a particular gravitational tendency towards self-evaluation. This is not an accident. The regions of the network that are most involved in self-referential processing, the medial prefrontal cortex in particular, and the posterior cingulate cortex, are specifically oriented toward monitoring the self. Monitoring how things are going for you, assessing your circumstances, comparing your current situation to your expectations and hopes and fears. During the day, when your attention is outward and your task-positive network is active, this self-monitoring is a background process. You are aware of it in a vague way, but it does not usually dominate your experience. The demands of the day keep it in perspective. At night, in the quiet, it moves to the foreground. And the particular character of this self-monitoring, when it runs without the moderating influence of external demands and the social context of being around other people, has a tendency to focus on the things that are unresolved, the problems that have not been solved, the conversations that did not go quite right, the things you said that you wish you had said differently, the things that are uncertain or worrying about the future. Researchers who study this pattern have given it the name rumination, and they have documented it extensively in the scientific literature. Rumination is a specific form of repetitive, self-directed thinking that tends to focus on negative content, past mistakes, current concerns, anticipated problems. It is the mental equivalent of a needle stuck in a groove, returning to the same territory again and again without making meaningful progress through it. Research published in Behavioral Sleep Medicine has mapped how this nighttime thinking actually works in some detail. The researchers found it helpful to distinguish between two somewhat different patterns. One pattern is future-oriented. This is more like worry in the classic sense. The mind runs through potential threats, anticipated difficulties, things that might go wrong. What will happen? What should I be preparing for? What are the possible bad outcomes of the situation I am in? This future-oriented worry is particularly strongly associated with difficulty falling asleep. It produces a kind of mental alertness and readiness that is directly incompatible with the biological process of winding down towards sleep. The brain that is scanning for future threats is a brain that is keeping its arousal system activated. It is the opposite of what sleep requires. The second pattern is past-oriented, genuine rumination in the technical sense. The mind returns to events that have already happened, conversations that have already taken place, moments that are already over and cannot be changed. It replays and reevaluates and tries to find something that was missed the first time through. This pattern is more strongly associated with poor sleep quality, feeling unrest and unrestored, even when sleep does eventually come, because it tends to continue into lighter sleep stages and fragment the quality of rest from within. Research using daily diary and actigraphy methods, small wristwatch devices that measure movement to estimate sleep objectively, has found that on days when people experience higher stress and also ruminate more than usual about that stress, they tend to fall asleep later, sleep for shorter periods, and show higher cortisol levels the following morning. The chain of effects runs clearly from stress to rumination to disrupted sleep to elevated morning cortisol. And elevated morning cortisol can feed back into the next day's stress, potentially creating a cycle that perpetuates itself. Neither of these patterns, worry or rumination, represents a character flaw. Both are deeply human. Both are connected to the same basic mechanism, the default mode network activating in low stimulation conditions and, as it always does, finding the threads that carry the most emotional weight and the least resolution. The things the nighttime mind returns to are, almost always, the things that matter most. The worries are worries because you care. The replays happen because those experiences had real significance. The unresolved conversations surface because relationships and connection are among the things your brain treats as most important to monitor and protect. There is something almost tender in understanding it this way. The brain that keeps you awake with difficult thoughts is not your enemy. It is the same brain that cares about your life, that wants things to go well for you, that is trying, in a somewhat awkward and not always helpful way, to make sure that nothing important has been missed. Now let us talk about the chemistry of what is happening in your body as the day ends and the evening deepens, because the experience of lying in the dark before sleep is not just a psychological one. It is profoundly physiological. There is a cascading sequence of chemical changes happening right now, in your blood and your brain, that is shaping everything you feel and think and experience. The master timekeeper for all of this is a small cluster of neurons deep in the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is your body's circadian pacemaker, the structure that keeps time and coordinates the roughly 24-hour cycle that governs almost every physiological process in your body. The suprachiasmatic nucleus keeps its time by monitoring light signals that come in through your eyes, transmitted along a dedicated pathway from the retina called the retinohypothalamic tract. As the day progresses toward evening and the amount of light your eyes are receiving decreases, the suprachiasmatic nucleus sends signals through a multi-step pathway that eventually reaches the pineal gland, a small pea-sized structure located roughly in the center of the brain. In response to the diminishing light signal, the pineal gland ramps up its production of melatonin. Melatonin is sometimes described as the darkness hormone, and that is a fairly accurate description. Its presence in your bloodstream is a chemical signal to the body that it is nighttime and that the processes associated with wakefulness should begin to yield to the processes associated with sleep. It does not cause sleep directly. It is not a sedative in the pharmacological sense. It is more like a biological timestamp, telling your body's systems what time it is so that they can behave accordingly. One of melatonin's most significant effects is on a structure in the brainstem called the locus coeruleus. The locus coeruleus is a small but extraordinarily influential cluster of neurons that is the primary source in the brain of a neurotransmitter called norepinephrine. The noradrenergic cells of the locus coeruleus fire actively during waking states, sending norepinephrine broadly throughout the brain, to the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the basal forebrain, and the cortex, in ways that promote alertness, attentional focus, and the kind of aroused, responsive wakefulness that is the hallmark of being fully awake. Norepinephrine is, in a sense, part of the chemistry of daylight. The chemical signal associated with being alert and engaged and ready to respond to the world. Melatonin acts on specific receptors on locus coeruleus neurons, and when it binds to these receptors, it quiets them down. The firing rate of the locus coeruleus decreases. The flow of norepinephrine through the brain diminishes. The arousal-promoting drive that has been supporting your wakefulness begins to loosen its grip. This is part of what creates that particular, familiar feeling of evening tiredness. Not just a depletion of physical energy, though that is also present, but a genuine neurochemical loosening of the alertness machinery. The brain is receiving a message, carried in molecules, that it is time to begin the transition. But here is something important to understand about this process, because it is central to why the pre-sleep period feels the way it does. The transition from wakefulness to sleep is not a cliff. It is not a switch that flips from on to off. It is a gradual, layered process that unfolds over the course of an hour or more for most people. During this transition, different systems change at different rates. The arousal system winds down gradually. The sleep-promoting systems ramp up gradually. And in the middle, for an extended period, neither is fully dominant. In this middle state, the default mode network has unusually free rein because the task-positive network has lost its fuel. The norepinephrine and other arousal chemicals that keep external attention activated are declining, but the default mode network has not yet been suppressed by the onset of deep sleep. It is, in a sense, the last network standing, the one that remains when the wakefulness architecture has loosened but sleep has not yet fully arrived. This is the neuroscience of those long, sometimes restless hours of pre-sleep thought. The brain is not malfunctioning, it is transitioning, and in the transition, the part of the brain that produces your inner life is temporarily unsuppressed and unchallenged. There is another chemical to add to this picture, one that is particularly relevant to the nighttime experience of many people. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone, and it follows a very clear daily pattern under normal circumstances. It peaks in the morning, rising steeply in the first hour after you wake up in what researchers call the cortisol awakening response. This morning surge is part of what helps you shift from sleep to wakefulness. It mobilizes energy, sharpens attention, primes the body for the demands of the day. After this morning peak, cortisol levels gradually decline throughout the day. By the evening, under normal circumstances, cortisol should be at or near its lowest point. This low cortisol evening state is an important part of the conditions that allow sleep to come. And importantly, it is specifically during this window of low cortisol that melatonin production can rise most freely. But cortisol is also the primary hormonal response to psychological stress. Whenever the brain's threat monitoring systems determine that something requires urgent attention, a conflict, an uncertainty, a demand that exceeds current resources, they trigger the release of cortisol. And cortisol, when elevated, keeps the brain and body in a state of readiness that is directly incompatible with the process of winding down towards sleep. Research has found that elevated cortisol in the evening suppresses melatonin production. This is a direct physiological mechanism by which stress can disrupt the sleep onset process. The stress system and the sleep system are, in a concrete chemical sense, antagonists. When one is elevated, it opposes the other. This means that if you have had a stressful day, or if you have been in the presence of emotionally stimulating content in the hours before bed, the cortisol curve may not have followed its usual downward arc. You may arrive at bedtime with cortisol levels that are higher than they would otherwise be. The arousal system is still active. The melatonin signal is partially blunted. The brain has not fully received the chemical message that it is time to let go. And when you lie in the dark under these conditions, arousal system still activated, cortisol still relatively elevated, default mode network running freely, the thoughts that emerge are filtered through that state of arousal. They tend toward the urgent, toward the concerning, toward the things that feel like they require attention even though there is nothing you can do about them right now. This is the neurochemical basis of what many people experience as racing thoughts at bedtime. It is not a failure of willpower. It is not a weakness of character. It is a system in a state that is physiologically primed for alertness, meeting a sensory environment that provides nothing to be alert to, and generating its own content to fill the gap. Understanding this does not necessarily make the experience comfortable, but it can change the relationship you have with it. The racing thoughts are not a sign that something is fundamentally wrong with you. They are a sign that your system is doing what aroused systems do. And aroused systems, given time and the right conditions, return to their baseline. They always do. Let your body rest into this understanding. There is nothing you need to do with any of what has been said. Let it just be words that have moved through you. Your breathing is slow. Your body is lying down. The conditions for sleep are present. Now let us go back further, much further, back past the chemistry of individual brains, back past the decades of neuroscience research, back to the context that shaped the brains you carry with you. Because what we are talking about tonight, the brain that resists silence, the mind that fills the night with vigilance and self-monitoring and emotional processing, is not something that emerged recently. It is not a product of modern stress or screens or the particular pressures of contemporary life, though all of those things can certainly intensify it. It is something much older. Human beings have been lying in the dark for a very long time. For hundreds of thousands of years before there were beds or rooms or the kind of sheltered, protected sleep that most of us have access to tonight, our ancestors were sleeping in environments that were genuinely dangerous. They slept in small groups, in shelters that offered only partial protection, in landscapes where large predators were active at night, where threats from other groups were real, where the darkness was not simply an inconvenience but a time of elevated vulnerability. In that environment, sleep was a compromise. It was necessary. The physiological processes that sleep enables are so fundamental to life that no organism can simply opt out without severe consequences. But sleep also carried risks. An organism that shut down its threat monitoring systems completely during the hours of darkness was an organism that might not survive to see the morning. The organisms that did survive generation after generation were those whose nervous systems struck the most effective balance. Sleep deeply enough to complete the physiological work that sleep enables. but not so deeply or so completely that the ability to detect and respond to threats was entirely lost. Evolutionary psychologists who have studied human sleep from this perspective have made a compelling argument that many of the features of human sleep that we now tend to think of as problems, things like difficulty falling asleep in quiet and dark environments, frequent awakenings during the night, the heightened sensitivity to sounds at night, these are not bugs. They are the remnants of adaptive tendencies that served a real function in the environment where human sleep evolved. A 2022 paper in the journal Evolutionary Psychological Science laid out several of these proposed adaptations explicitly. The difficulty some people have falling asleep may trace back to a tendency toward prolonged vigilance at the onset of darkness, a tendency to keep watch when the night first fell, to survey the environment before surrendering to sleep, to make sure all was well before allowing consciousness to loosen its grip. In a world with real predators and real dangers, that tendency could have been genuinely protective. Difficulty initiating sleep in the ancestral environment would have prolonged the period of environmental surveillance during the most vulnerable hours of the night. The frequent awakenings that some people experience through the night may trace back to an adaptive pattern in which members of a sleeping group would naturally cycle through lighter, more watchful sleep at different times, ensuring that the group as a whole maintained some level of environmental monitoring even while everyone was ostensibly resting. A large-scale European study of more than 22,000 people found that 31% reported waking at least 3 nights per week, a figure that, viewed through the evolutionary lens, suggests that the tendency toward nocturnal wakefulness is not an anomaly but a deeply embedded characteristic of human sleep. The heightened sensitivity to sounds at night, the way a small noise can seem much louder in a quiet bedroom than it would during the day, that is almost certainly a direct descendant of the perceptual vigilance that kept our ancestors alive. A sleeping brain that can be awakened by a meaningful sound. Footsteps in the dark, a cry, something moving through the undergrowth, is a brain that is still doing its job even in sleep. The amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in the medial temporal lobe, is the brain structure most associated with threat detection and the emotional processing of potentially dangerous information. It has been consistently shown to be particularly active during REM sleep, the stage of sleep most associated with dreaming and, paradoxically, the stage during which the voluntary muscles are most completely paralyzed, leaving the body most physically vulnerable. The amygdala is alert precisely when the body is most defenseless. This is not a coincidence. It reflects the brain's ongoing attempt to maintain some level of protective vigilance even within the depths of sleep. Research from functional neuroimaging has further shown that a circuit connecting the amygdala to the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex is specifically associated with what researchers call threat vigilance, the tendency to attend to and process information about possible dangers. This circuit does not simply switch off at bedtime. It runs at a lower intensity through the night, monitoring the acoustic environment, flagging anything that might require attention, maintaining the background readiness that allowed our ancestors to respond quickly when they needed to. You carry this history in your brain. The part of you that lies awake scanning the dark, that perks at small sounds, that cannot quite let the monitoring function rest. That part of you is very old. It was doing its job long before there were names for what it was doing. Let that knowledge settle into you like warmth. There is nothing wrong with your brain. There is nothing wrong with you. The watchfulness you feel at night, the way your mind does not simply switch off when you close your eyes, the quiet alertness that persists even when everything around you is still. These are signs of a nervous system that is doing what it was designed to do. You are the descendant of the people who survived the night because their brains did exactly this. You are here because of those brains. And now you are here in a place that is safe. In a room with walls and a ceiling and warmth. With nothing coming that your nighttime mind needs to prepare for. You can let the watch end for tonight. You can let the guard rest. Now let us talk about how the brain changes as you move from wakefulness towards sleep, because this transition is one of the most interesting things the brain does, and it has a lot to do with why the experience of lying in the dark before sleep feels the way it does. Neuroscientists have mapped this transition in extraordinary detail using electroencephalography, the recording of brain electrical activity through electrodes placed on the scalp. And what these studies have revealed is that the transition is not a simple shift from one state to another. It is a layered, gradual process of change in which different systems yield at different rates and different brain wave patterns emerge and then give way to others. In alert wakefulness, the dominant pattern of brain electrical activity involves what researchers call beta waves, relatively fast oscillations, somewhere between 14 and 30 cycles per second. This pattern is associated with active, engaged, externally directed thought. When you are working on something demanding, when you are having a focused conversation, when you are fully attending to the outside world, beta activity is prominent. As you relax, as you lie down, as the lights go low, as the sounds around you diminish, the pattern begins to shift. Beta waves give way to alpha waves, slower oscillations of roughly 8 to 12 cycles per second. Alpha activity is associated with relaxed alertness, a state in which you are awake but not actively engaged with external demands. It is the brain state of someone lying comfortably with their eyes closed, at ease but not drowsy. If you have ever had the experience of lying in bed feeling restful and peaceful before sleep, that is what alpha activity feels like from the inside. As the alpha state deepens, something interesting begins to happen. The brain begins to enter what researchers call the hypnagogic state, from Greek words meaning sleep leading, a word for the threshold experience between waking and sleeping. In this state, the dominant brain wave pattern begins to include more theta activity, slower oscillations of around 4 to 7 cycles per second. And theta activity is associated with something quite different from the orderly, linear thinking of wakefulness. In the theta state, the normal rules of conscious thought begin to loosen. The sequential, narrative quality of waking thinking, one thought following another in a chain of logic, begins to dissolve. What replaces it is something more associative, more image-based, more emotionally vivid, and less subject to the ordinary constraints of the waking mind. This is the state in which the hypnagogic experiences occur. The fleeting, half-formed visions that appear briefly behind closed eyes before sleep arrives. A face you do not recognize. A scene that is nowhere you have ever been. A fragment of sound or speech. An image that has the logic of a dream but the brevity of a thought. These experiences arise because in the theta state, the default mode network is expressing itself with less and less interference from the prefrontal cortex, which is the brain's center of rational, controlled, organized thought. As the prefrontal cortex begins to quiet, as its activity is no longer supported by the arousal chemicals that keep it engaged, the default mode network's content becomes less filtered. The brain's inner world becomes more like a landscape you are moving through and less like a text you are reading. The coherent narrative of waking thought begins to break down into something more impressionistic, more atmospheric, less amenable to deliberate direction. This is a stage that many people experience as uncomfortable when they are anxious about sleep, because the loosening of cognitive control can feel like a loss rather than a transition. The organized mind that you rely on to keep things in order is becoming less organized. The sense of deliberate self-direction is fading. And for a brain that has been trained to value control and organization, this loosening can trigger a reflexive attempt to reassert control. To pull back toward wakefulness, to check on the process, to make sure everything is proceeding correctly. This reflexive pull toward wakefulness is one of the central mechanisms that perpetuates difficulty sleeping. The very act of monitoring whether sleep is coming keeps the brain in a state of active, self-directed attention, which is precisely the state that sleep requires you to move away from. Researchers who study insomnia from a cognitive perspective have described this as a form of hypervigilance specific to the sleep situation. The hyperarousal that characterizes insomnia is not simply a matter of being generally anxious. It is a specific state of heightened monitoring directed at sleep itself. People who have difficulty sleeping often develop a selective attentional bias towards sleep-relevant information. They become unusually sensitive to internal signals of arousal, to the quality of their own thoughts, to the environment of their bedroom. The bed and the dark and the silence become cues for a particular kind of anxious monitoring rather than cues for rest. This is what researchers call conditioned arousal. The process by which bedtime circumstances that were once associated with sleep become, through repeated experience of lying awake in them, associated instead with the anticipatory anxiety of not sleeping. The bedroom that was once simply where sleep happened has, for some people and on some nights, become a place that triggers the very arousal that prevents it. The cognitive model of insomnia, developed over many years by researchers including Alison Harvey, describes this dynamic with considerable precision. Sleep is one of the things in life that requires, fundamentally, the opposite of effort. It requires surrender. It requires allowing rather than doing. It requires trust in a process that proceeds without your management if you will simply stop managing it. Let that land in you gently. Trust. This is not a performance. There is nothing to do correctly. The breath that moves through you right now is moving without your instruction. The heart that beats in your chest is beating without your management. The chemistry of melatonin and adenosine and GABA that is working to draw you towards sleep is proceeding without your supervision. Your body has done this every single night of your life. It knows the way. Let us stay for a moment with what happens in the deepest stages of sleep, because understanding the architecture of sleep as a whole changes the way the nighttime mind can be held. When sleep arrives, genuine sleep, deep and restoring, it begins with the early stages of NREM sleep. NREM stands for non-rapid eye movement, and it encompasses several stages of increasing depth. The early, lighter stages are characterized by the appearance of sleep spindles, characteristic bursts of oscillatory brain activity at around 12 to 15 cycles per second, generated by interactions between the thalamus and cortex and K-complexes, large, slow electrical responses that occur in response to external stimulation even during sleep. Even in these light stages of sleep, the thalamus is already reducing the flow of sensory information to the cortex. This process is called sensory gating, and it is mediated by a thin sheet of inhibitory neurons called the reticular thalamic nucleus that wraps around the thalamus like a net. The reticular thalamic nucleus progressively increases its inhibitory pressure on the thalamic relay cells as sleep deepens, effectively reducing the traffic of sensory information flowing up to the cortex. The deeper the sleep, the more thoroughly this gate is closed. As the night progresses and sleep deepens into slow-wave sleep, the brain produces the large, synchronized oscillations called delta waves, very slow, less than 4 cycles per second, and very large in amplitude. Slow-wave sleep is the most physically restorative stage of sleep. Growth hormone is released in pulses. The immune system is particularly active. The glymphatic system, a waste clearance system that operates in the brain primarily during sleep, circulates cerebrospinal fluid through the brain's interstitial spaces, washing away the metabolic byproducts that have accumulated during waking hours. The brain cleans itself during sleep in a way it literally cannot do while awake. Woven through the NREM sleep architecture, recurring roughly every 90 minutes, are periods of REM sleep. The brain during REM sleep is, paradoxically, closer to waking in some of its electrical characteristics than to deep NREM sleep. There is a great deal of activity. The amygdala, as we have noted, is particularly active. Limbic and paralimbic brain regions, the areas associated with emotion and motivation, are engaged. The visual cortex is active even without external visual input, generating the imagery of dreams. One of the most striking features of REM sleep is the state of muscle atonia, the near-complete paralysis of the voluntary muscles that occurs during this stage. This paralysis is generated by active signals from the brainstem that inhibit the motor neurons of the spinal cord, preventing the dreaming brain from acting out the content of its dreams. People who lack this protective paralysis experience what is called REM sleep behavior disorder. They do physically act out their dreams, sometimes with significant consequences. The content of dreams has been a subject of intense scientific interest for decades. One influential evolutionary perspective on dreaming, called the threat simulation theory, suggests that the dreaming brain is, among other things, rehearsing responses to threatening or emotionally significant situations, running simulations that may prepare the organism for real-world challenges. The observation that dreams across cultures and across history tend to disproportionately involve threatening, negative, or emotionally intense content is consistent with this view. Whatever the ultimate function of dreaming turns out to be, the research on memory consolidation provides at least one clear and well-supported answer to the question of what the nighttime brain is doing. It is processing. The hippocampus's consolidation work, begun during the quiet pre-sleep period we talked about earlier, continues through the night. During NREM sleep, hippocampal replay coordinates with cortical slow oscillations to transfer newly encoded memories from temporary to permanent storage. During REM sleep, these memory traces are further processed. Emotional content is integrated, and connections between new learning and existing knowledge are strengthened. The brain is working throughout the night quietly on your life, not resting from it, working on it, organizing the day's experience into the larger structure of your history, connecting new information to what was already known, strengthening important memories and allowing less important ones to fade. When you wake in the morning, the night's work will have been done, mostly invisibly, without your awareness or assistance. The breath becomes slower. If you are aware of your hands and feet, let that awareness become soft and unfocused, like looking at something from the corner of your eye. The edges of the body can blur a little. The boundary between you and the bed between you and the air in the room can become less sharp. This is what happens when the default mode network's activity begins to slow, when the theta waves come, when the tight narrative of waking consciousness begins to loosen. The sense of self becomes less precise, and that is not frightening. It is simply what it is like to be almost asleep. We have talked tonight about many things. About the auditory cortex that listens even in silence. About the default mode network and its work of self-reflection and memory processing. About the hippocampus and the slow nightly work of consolidation. About cortisol and melatonin and the neurochemistry of sleep onset. About the evolutionary roots of nighttime vigilance and the ancient mechanisms that make the brain resistant to fully surrendering to the dark. Let us bring all of these threads together now, quietly, in a way that might be useful to carry into sleep. Your brain does not hate silence at night. That is not quite the right way to say it. Your brain treats silence at night as information. Your brain, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution in environments where the dark carried real risk, takes the absence of familiar, expected sounds seriously. It interprets quiet the way a careful observer interprets an unusual stillness. Not as nothing, but as potentially something. And in the space that this heightened sensitivity creates, the default mode network runs freely. The autobiographical memory system surfaces the day's experiences for processing. The emotional systems work through the accumulated weight of the day's interactions and stresses. The hippocampus begins its work of consolidation. The whole inward-directed apparatus of the mind. The part that makes sense of your life, that connects your past to your present and your present to your anticipated future. That apparatus has the room and the quiet it needs to do what it does. This is not a problem. This is your mind working. And gradually, in the way of all processes that run long enough, it begins to complete its work. The most urgent memories are reviewed. The most pressing concerns are turned over enough times that they begin to lose some of their urgency. The arousal chemistry decreases. The melatonin rises. The default mode network's activity begins to slow and simplify. The thoughts become less sequential and more atmospheric. The sense of self becomes less specific. The careful, managed consciousness of wakefulness gives way to something looser and more open. And somewhere in that loosening, the threshold arrives. Not with announcement, not with fanfare, simply with a quality of absence where presence was. The gap where thought was a moment ago, and you have crossed over without noticing. This is what sleep is like, from the inside. A gradual dissolution, a fading of the edges, a handing over of the night to processes that do not need your attention. The breath has become the most present thing. Not the words, not the thoughts, just the breath moving in and out without effort. Your chest rises and falls with a rhythm that has always been there and will be there long after tonight. The body is heavy, not uncomfortably heavy, the good heavy of something that has found its resting place. Let the thoughts come if they come. Let them drift past if they drift. They do not need anything from you tonight. They are doing their work, and they can do it without your supervision. The hippocampus will take what it needs. The default mode network will follow its own threads. The chemistry of the night will proceed as it always has. You can let this happen without watching it. You can simply be here, lying in the dark, breathing, somewhere between one state and another, near the edge of the place that holds you every night. The room is very quiet now. Whatever sounds there are, the faint hiss of air, the small sounds of the building, the distant sounds of the world outside. These are simply the texture of the night. They are not requiring anything of you. They are just there, and you are just here. There is a particular quality of the mind in the last minutes before sleep that is difficult to describe but very easy to recognize once you have felt it. The thoughts begin to lose their coherence. The one that was just present has already half dissolved. The connection between this thought and the next becomes looser, less logical. Something that a moment ago was a clear and specific concern is now just a feeling, without content, without direction. This is the theta state arriving fully. This is the edge of sleep making itself felt. Let it come. Do not follow it actively. Do not reach toward it. Just allow the loosening that is already happening to continue at its own pace. You have been thinking all day. The brain has been doing its remarkable work of processing the world, interpreting sensory information, managing social interactions, planning, remembering, deciding. It has been doing this for all the hours since you last woke, without interruption, without rest. And now the day is done. The work is done. Whatever was not finished today will still be there tomorrow, and tomorrow will hold what needs to be held. Tonight belongs to the body's wisdom. Tonight belongs to the slow chemistry of the dark, the ancient biology of rest, the brain that has been watching over you since before you can remember and will continue to do so through every hour of this night. You are safe. You are warm. You are lying down. The room holds you. The night holds you. Your own body, with all its quiet knowledge of how to breathe and regulate and restore, holds you. Sleep will come the way sleep always comes, without announcement, without effort, like the tide coming in without any particular moment you can point to when the tide was not yet in. You will not notice the exact moment. You will simply find yourself on the other side of it, carried there by the same biology that carries you every night. Let the breath slow a little more. Let the weight of the body increase. Let the space between thoughts widen. The night is long and unhurried. There is no schedule to keep here. There is nowhere to be before morning. The brain that seems so reluctant to let go is already letting go, already loosening its grip, already beginning to trust the dark in the way it always does, eventually every night without fail. And if this particular night takes a little longer than some, that is fine. The body is resting even when the mind is still moving, lying quietly in the dark, breathing slowly, letting the thoughts come and go without holding them. This is not a failed sleep. This is a different kind of rest, and it is doing something real. The nervous system is settling. The arousal chemistry is declining. The conditions for sleep are continuing to deepen. Every breath brings you a little closer. Just breathe. That is all. The breath is slow and easy and does not need your help. Let us linger here a little longer. The science has more to say, and it says it slowly, and slowly is exactly the right pace for tonight. We have talked about the default mode network and the hippocampus and the evolutionary roots of nighttime vigilance. But there are several more threads worth following, because they deepen the picture of what is happening in your brain during these quiet nighttime hours in ways that are, I think, genuinely comforting to understand. Let us talk about the thalamus in more detail, because it is one of the most important structures in the story of sleep, and its role is underappreciated. The thalamus is often described in neuroscience textbooks as a relay station, a structure that receives sensory information from the outside world and forwards it to the appropriate regions of the cortex for processing. That description is accurate as far as it goes, but it misses something important. The thalamus is not a passive relay. It is an active gatekeeper. One of its most critical functions is the selective control of the flow of sensory information to the cortex during different states of the sleep-wake cycle. Surrounding the thalamus like a shell is a thin layer of inhibitory neurons called the reticular thalamic nucleus. This structure is directly involved in regulating how much sensory information gets through from the thalamus to the cortex at any given moment. During wakefulness, the reticular thalamic nucleus is relatively quiet, allowing a fairly free flow of sensory data upward to the cortex. During light sleep, it becomes more active, increasing the inhibition of the thalamic relay cells and reducing that flow. During deep sleep, it becomes even more active, closing the gate more thoroughly. The reticular thalamic nucleus, in other words, acts as a variable dimmer switch for sensory input. A 2024 paper in the Journal of Sleep Research reviewed the mechanics of what researchers call sensory gating during sleep in some detail. The review described a beautiful two-part system. On one side, sensory gating reduces the overall flow of sensory information to the cortex, facilitating the brain state of sleep. On the other side, a complementary process of sensory gaining allows important signals, those that carry survival-relevant information, to still break through so that a sleeper can be awakened by a genuinely important stimulus even in deep sleep. This is why a sleeping person can remain undisturbed by the sounds of ordinary traffic outside their window, but can be instantly awakened by the sound of their own name being called, or by an unusual sound that pattern matches to something important. The thalamus is not simply closed during sleep. It is selectively closed. It is still listening, still making decisions about what matters enough to pass upward, still maintaining the balance between the protection of sleep and the safety of the person sleeping. This selective permeability is why sleep is such an interesting middle ground between rest and responsiveness. You are not, during sleep, simply absent from your environment. You are still present to it in a filtered way, still responsive to what genuinely matters. The brain during sleep is a brain that has chosen what to tune out, not a brain that has turned off entirely. And during the pre-sleep period, when the reticular thalamic nucleus is beginning to increase its inhibitory pressure but has not yet fully closed the gate, you are in a particularly interesting state. The sensory input from the outside world is being gradually reduced. But the internal signals, the memories, the thoughts, the emotional processing have not been reduced at all. In fact, as we have discussed, they may be relatively amplified by the absence of competition from external input. This is the thalamic contribution to the experience of lying awake in the dark with a busy mind. The gate is closing for the outside world. It has not yet closed for the inside world. There is another structure worth mentioning in this context, one that does not get as much attention in popular discussions of sleep, but that plays a central role in the experience we are describing. It is called the anterior cingulate cortex. The anterior cingulate cortex is a region located in the frontal part of the brain, curving around the front of the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of fibers that connects the two hemispheres. It is involved in a remarkable range of functions: error detection, conflict monitoring, emotion regulation, pain processing, attention, and decision-making. It is one of those brain regions that seems to have its fingers in almost everything, because it occupies an important position at the interface between cognitive processing and emotional processing. One of the anterior cingulate's key functions is what researchers call conflict monitoring, the detection of situations where there is a mismatch between what was expected and what actually occurred, or between competing possible responses. This monitoring function is what generates the experience of noticing that something is not quite right, that there is a problem that needs attention, that there is something unresolved. At night, the anterior cingulate cortex is often active in ways that contribute to the experience of unsettled nighttime thinking. When you lie in the dark and find yourself returning again and again to a conversation that felt wrong, or a decision that feels uncertain, the anterior cingulate is doing part of the work of generating that sense of unresolvedness. It is flagging the mismatches, the places where things did not go as expected, where the outcome is still uncertain, where something requires more attention before it can be filed away. This is not comfortable necessarily, but it is meaningful. The anterior cingulate is essentially performing a kind of quality control function on the contents of consciousness, flagging what has not yet been fully processed, keeping the open loops open until they can be more thoroughly addressed. Research on emotion regulation has found that mindfulness practices, the deliberate, non-judgmental observation of thoughts and feelings without clinging to them or pushing them away, tend to reduce the activity of the anterior cingulate in ways that are associated with decreased rumination. The mechanism seems to be that the act of observing thoughts rather than being caught in them reduces the conflict monitoring urgency that the anterior cingulate generates. When a thought can be observed and acknowledged rather than engaged with as a problem to be solved, it loses some of its power to demand attention. This is part of why the approach of simply letting thoughts come and go, the approach that underlies much of what happens in a video like this one, has a genuine neurological basis. You are not suppressing the thoughts. You are not pushing them away. You are allowing them to pass through the field of awareness without engaging the problem-solving, conflict monitoring circuitry that would try to resolve them. And in doing so, you are reducing the loop of anxious engagement that tends to keep the arousal system activated. The thoughts can still be there. They can still float through. The anterior cingulate can still note them. But if you do not engage them as urgent problems requiring immediate resolution, they do not generate the same level of arousal. They are simply events in the field of awareness, like sounds from a distance. Take a moment here to notice the quality of your awareness right now. Not to judge it, not to assess whether you are falling asleep or not, or whether your mind is too busy or not busy enough. Just to notice what is present. There may be thoughts. There may be feelings. There may be physical sensations, a weight, a warmth, a slight awareness of where the body meets the surface beneath it. All of this is fine. All of this is simply what is here. Nothing requires your attention. Nothing requires your response. You can just notice lightly and then let the noticing go. Let us talk about one more thing that is happening in your brain as you lie in the dark. Something that operates largely below the threshold of conscious awareness, but that shapes the entire quality of your pre-sleep experience. It is the process of adenosine accumulation. Adenosine is a chemical byproduct of neural activity. As neurons fire, as the brain does its work throughout the day, adenosine is produced as a metabolic byproduct and gradually accumulates in the extracellular space around neurons, the fluid-filled gaps between brain cells. Adenosine binds to receptors on neurons and, in doing so, has an inhibitory effect. It reduces neural excitability, decreases alertness, and promotes the subjective experience of tiredness. This is actually the mechanism by which caffeine works. Caffeine is a molecule that is structurally similar enough to adenosine that it can fit into adenosine's receptors and block them, not activating them, but preventing adenosine from activating them. When caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, the alertness-reducing effect of accumulated adenosine is temporarily masked, and you feel more awake. When the caffeine clears your system, the adenosine is still there and still waiting, which is why the tiredness that caffeine delays often returns, sometimes with additional intensity several hours later. The accumulation of adenosine throughout the waking day is what researchers call homeostatic sleep pressure, the increasing drive towards sleep that builds as a function of how long you have been awake. It is a kind of biological debt that accumulates with every hour of wakefulness and can only be fully repaid by sleeping. The longer you stay awake, the more adenosine accumulates, the stronger the homeostatic pressure becomes, and the more powerfully the brain is being pushed towards sleep. This is one of the reasons why sleep, in the end, is essentially irresistible. The homeostatic sleep pressure that has been building all day, combined with the circadian signal from the suprachiasmatic nucleus that it is nighttime, creates a drive towards sleep that the brain's arousal systems cannot indefinitely oppose. Even the most alert brain, even a brain in the grip of anxiety or stress, will eventually yield to the accumulated adenosine pressure and the insistent signal of the melatonin arc. Sleep is inevitable, not as a platitude but as physiology. Breathe slowly. The adenosine in your brain right now is doing its work. The melatonin is doing its work. The long, quiet arc of the night is doing its work. You do not have to do anything except be here and breathe and let the biology proceed. There is a concept in sleep medicine called sleep homeostasis, and it describes the way the brain balances sleep and wakefulness over time. Not just over the course of a single night, but over days and weeks and longer. The system is remarkably robust. When people are experimentally sleep deprived, when they are prevented from sleeping for extended periods, and then allowed to sleep freely, they typically recover much of the lost sleep, not necessarily in equal amounts, but in a weighted recovery that prioritizes the deepest, most restorative stages. The brain keeps track of what it needs. It maintains accounts. And when the debt is large, it repays it with unusual efficiency, dropping into the deepest stages of sleep more quickly than usual, staying there longer, ensuring that the most critical physiological work gets done. This homeostatic system means that even difficult nights when sleep is fragmented, when the mind is restless, when the morning comes with a sense of having not been fully restored, are not without value. The body still gets some portion of what it needs. The brain still does some of its consolidation work. The homeostatic drive increases with each imperfect night, making the subsequent night's sleep more efficient. The system corrects itself naturally over time as long as you give it the chance. Understanding this takes some of the urgency out of any single difficult night. One night of imperfect sleep does not undo what the brain and body need. The arc of the week, the month, the ongoing relationship between sleep and wakefulness. That is what matters for health and restoration. Any single night is just one point on that arc. There is something worth sitting with about the relationship between the brain and darkness. For most of human history, darkness was the primary cue that organized the nightly transition to sleep. Without artificial light, the end of the day's light was the signal that initiated the entire cascade of physiological changes we have been talking about. The melatonin rise, the locus coeruleus quieting, the temperature drop that accompanies sleep preparation. The darkness itself was part of the mechanism. Modern life has complicated this. Artificial light, and particularly the short wavelength blue light emitted by screens, activates the same retinal photoreceptors that the suprachiasmatic nucleus uses to determine what time it is. Exposure to this kind of light in the evening hours tells the suprachiasmatic nucleus that it is still day, delays the rise of melatonin, and pushes back the onset of the entire sleep preparation cascade. This is a very recent challenge, evolutionarily speaking. For the overwhelming majority of human history, the hours after sunset were genuinely dark. The brain learned, over countless generations, to use the arrival of darkness as the starting gun for sleep preparation. Now, many of us exist in environments where that darkness is significantly delayed or never quite arrives, and the brain's ancient timekeeping systems are receiving confused signals about what time of night it is. This is not catastrophic. The brain is adaptable, and the sleep system has significant redundancy. But it does mean that deliberately creating darker, quieter conditions in the evening, reducing screen exposure, dimming lights, allowing the environment to signal that the day is ending, works with the biology in a way that fighting it does not. You are not just creating a pleasant atmosphere. You are giving the suprachiasmatic nucleus the cue it is looking for. The darkness that can feel uncomfortable when you first lie down in it is, in a real sense, the darkness the brain has been waiting for. It is the signal. It is the start of the sequence that will carry you through the night. Let the darkness be here with you. Let it simply be the environment. Not empty, not threatening, just the particular quality of a space without light, which is the oldest and most natural sleep environment that has ever existed. Humans have been sleeping in darkness for as long as there have been humans. Your brain is very familiar with this. Your body is very familiar with this. The darkness is not something you have to adjust to. It is something you are already adapted for, already calibrated to, already shaped to receive as a signal of rest. Let us also spend a moment with the curious phenomenon of what happens when you are falling asleep and you notice yourself falling asleep. Most people have had the experience of hovering near the edge of sleep, close enough to feel the loosening of the boundary, close enough that the hypnagogic images have started to appear, and then being startled back to full wakefulness by the very awareness of how close to sleep they were. Sometimes this happens with a physical jolt, a sudden muscle contraction called a hypnic jerk. Sometimes it happens more quietly, as a thought, "Oh, I was almost asleep." And that thought itself is enough to pull the mind back from the threshold. The hypnic jerk, that sudden involuntary spasm of the body that can feel like stepping off a curb when there is no curb there, has been studied and explained in several ways. One common explanation is that it is a kind of relic response, a vestige of a reflex that was more significant in the bodies of tree-sleeping primates, where the loosening of muscle tone at sleep onset could mean the beginning of a dangerous fall from a branch. The brain, noticing the sudden relaxation of muscle tone, generates a brief corrective contraction. Another explanation is simply that the transition to sleep involves a brief phase of neural instability, a period when the smooth handoff between wakefulness and sleep involves small, random discharges that can manifest as muscle twitches. Most hypnic jerks are nothing more than this, a minor artifact of the transition itself. The second kind of return from the edge of sleep, the cognitive kind, where noticing sleep arriving chases it away, is more psychologically interesting. It is a small illustration of the fundamental challenge of sleep onset, that sleep requires the suspension of the monitoring self, the part of consciousness that observes and reports on what is happening. As long as the observer is active, as long as the part of you that notices things is noticing that you are falling asleep, that noticing itself maintains a level of alertness that keeps sleep at bay. This is one of the reasons why some people find that they fall asleep more easily when they are listening to something, a podcast, an audiobook, a video like this one. The presence of audio to attend to gives the monitoring self something to do that is gentle enough not to prevent sleep, but engaging enough to occupy the attentional faculty, so that it is not actively monitoring the sleep process itself. The attention follows the words or the music or the quiet voice, and in following it moves away from the recursive self-monitoring that keeps sleep at arm's length. In this sense, content like this video is not just pleasant company. It is a gentle functional tool. It gives your attention somewhere to rest while the rest of you finds its way to sleep. Breathe. Let the words be where your attention rests, not trying to understand them all, not holding on to them, just letting them come, one after another, the way sounds come and pass in a room where nothing is happening. We have spoken tonight about the default mode network and its work. We have spoken about the hippocampus and memory consolidation. We have spoken about the thalamus and its sensory gating. We have spoken about melatonin and norepinephrine and cortisol and adenosine. We have spoken about the evolutionary roots of nighttime vigilance and the ways in which the brain's ancient threat monitoring systems persist in a world that is, for most people tonight, safe. All of this comes together in the picture of a brain that is genuinely, actively, productively engaged with the experience of night. A brain that is not failing to sleep, but rather arriving at sleep through a process that involves real and important work. The pre-sleep mind, with all its thoughts and memories and emotional processing and quiet vigilance, is not an obstacle to rest. It is part of rest. It is what rest looks like before the deeper phases arrive. The night is a long time, contains many states. The first state, the one you are in right now, perhaps, or the one you pass through on your way to where you are, is this state of gradual internal settling, of the day being processed and filed, of the accumulated weight of wakefulness beginning, slowly, to dissolve. From here, the sleep itself will come. It has its own architecture, its own stages, its own forms of work. And all of those stages will do what they are designed to do without your supervision, without your effort, simply by being allowed to proceed. The breath is all that matters right now. In and the chest rises. Out and the chest falls. In again, slowly, and the body is a little heavier. Out again, slowly, and the body sinks a little further. This is the body doing what it does. This is the night doing what nights do. And if there are still thoughts moving through you, there probably are, because the mind is a mind and thoughts are what it does. Let them be as they are. They are not a problem. They are not evidence that something is wrong. They are the last flickers of the default mode network's daily work, running through what is left to run through, completing what is left to complete. Each thought that comes and goes is one less thought waiting to come. The mind will empty in its own time. It always does. The room holds you. The dark holds you. The whole long, quiet, ancient history of human sleep. Every night that has ever been slept by every person who ever lived, going back through all the long ages of human existence, is in some sense behind this night too. This is what nights have always been: dark and quiet, and full of the soft inner life of brains finding their way toward rest. You are part of that long continuity. This night is yours the way all those nights belong to all those people. And it will carry you the way they were carried, through to morning. Sleep comes. Breath by breath it comes. Thought by thought, drifting past, it comes. Slowly, without effort, without notice, it comes. Let us explore one more layer of the nighttime brain. Something that is worth knowing about because it tends to make the experience of lying in the dark feel less lonely and less puzzling once you understand it. Researchers who study pre-sleep thinking have noted something interesting about the content of thoughts in the time before sleep. The themes that appear most frequently are not random. They tend to cluster around a few recurring categories, and these categories reveal something about what the brain is genuinely trying to accomplish during this period. One of the most common themes is what might be called unfinished social business. Thoughts about interactions with other people, conversations that felt incomplete, relationships that feel uncertain or strained, obligations to others that have not yet been met. This social content is consistent with what we know about the default mode network's particular involvement in social cognition. One of the things the default mode network does when it is running freely is model other people. Think about how they are feeling, what they might be thinking, how they perceive the situations you share. This social modeling is so fundamental to human life that the brain seems to treat it as one of the first things to work through when it has unstructured time. Another common theme is future planning, mental rehearsals of things that need to happen, preparations for conversations or situations that are anticipated, running through scenarios that might unfold in the coming days. This forward-looking quality of pre-sleep thought is connected to the default mode network's role in what researchers call mental time travel, the ability to project oneself mentally into the future to anticipate and prepare for possible events. Mental time travel is one of the most extraordinary things the human brain can do. The ability to imagine yourself in a future situation, to model what that situation will require, to prepare emotionally and practically for things that have not yet happened. This capacity is central to human planning, human social life, human culture. And the default mode network is one of its primary neural substrates. The same network that retrieves memories of the past can project imaginatively into the future. It travels through time in both directions. At night, with the default mode network running freely, this time-traveling quality of thought becomes particularly prominent. The mind moves between what has already happened and what might yet happen, between memories and anticipations, between the completed past and the uncertain future. This is not idle rumination. This is the brain doing what it is built to do, integrating past experience with future planning, working out the ongoing project of navigating through a complex social and physical world. The fact that this process can sometimes generate anxiety is not evidence that it is going wrong. Anxiety is, among other things, the emotional signal that the brain attaches to situations that are uncertain and important. If the future-directed thinking at night sometimes produces a flutter of worry, it is because the things you are thinking about genuinely matter to you. The anxiety is appropriate to the content. It is doing what anxiety is supposed to do, which is flag things that deserve attention. The problem arises only when the flagging becomes circular, when the same things are flagged over and over without any new information being added, without any progress being made through the concern. That circularity is what erodes sleep rather than contributing to it. And the way out of that circularity is not to suppress the thoughts. It is to allow them without engaging them. To notice the thought, yes, that's the conversation I'm thinking about again, and then let it pass without pulling it into the machinery of problem solving, without adding new elements of worry to it, without trying to resolve it right now when resolution is not possible. This is a skill, and like all skills, it takes practice. But the direction of the practice is clear, toward allowing, toward lightness, toward the recognition that the thought has been noted and can now be released. There is a term in neuroscience that I find particularly useful for thinking about what the brain is doing in these quiet hours. The term is offline processing. Many cognitive processes require the brain to be in something like an offline mode to complete their work. Memory consolidation is one of these. Emotional integration is another. The kind of associative, divergent thinking that produces creative insights and novel connections is another still. These processes do not happen well while the brain is simultaneously managing the demands of the external world. They require the reduction of external input, the quieting of the task-positive network, the freedom of the default mode network to follow its own threads without interruption. Sleep is the primary offline mode. But the pre-sleep period, the slow transition from wakefulness to sleep, with its gradually reduced external demands and its increasingly unconstrained internal activity, is also an offline mode of a kind. The brain is beginning to do the work that only offline processing can accomplish. Research has found that even brief periods of quiet rest, inserted between learning and subsequent recall, improve memory performance compared to spending the same time in active distraction. The brain seems to use even short windows of reduced external demand to begin the consolidation work that we usually attribute entirely to sleep. The quiet rest before sleep is not wasted time. It is part of the brain's working day, just a different kind of work. This means that even if sleep feels like it is taking a long time to arrive, the time spent in quiet pre-sleep rest is not lost. The brain is using it. The default mode network is processing. The hippocampus is beginning to consolidate. The emotional systems are working through the day's accumulated content. Progress is being made invisibly and automatically in the direction of restoration. Breathe slowly here in this quiet. Whatever has been said tonight has moved through you. Some of it may have been interesting. Some of it may have passed without leaving much of a trace. That is fine. That is exactly right. The words are just company for the mind while the body finds its way. There is a beautiful strangeness to the fact that consciousness itself, the very thing that makes you capable of listening to these words, of having the thought, I am lying here and I cannot sleep, of worrying about whether you are worrying too much. Consciousness is the very thing that must temporarily dissolve for sleep to arrive. Sleep requires the suspension of the ordinary self, the self that monitors and evaluates and plans and remembers, the self that knows it is lying in a room, in a bed, in the dark, trying to sleep. That self must become, at least temporarily, less definite. The edges of it must blur. The voice that runs a continuous commentary on experience must go quiet. Neuroscientists have found that the transition from wakefulness to sleep is associated with changes in what researchers call global workspace activity, the broad, coordinated neural broadcasting that underlies conscious experience. In wakefulness, conscious experience seems to involve a kind of global ignition. When something becomes conscious, it triggers widespread activity across many brain regions simultaneously, as though a message is being broadcast to the whole brain at once. In sleep, this global ignition is reduced. The broadcasts become more local, more fragmented. Information can be processed in one area without being globally broadcast throughout the network. This reduction in global workspace activity is not the death of consciousness. Dreaming is a form of consciousness, after all, often vivid and rich and experientially full, even if it is consciousness of a different kind. But it is the dissolution of the particular kind of consciousness that maintains the ordinary waking self, the continuous, narrative, socially embedded, temporally located sense of being a particular person in a particular place at a particular time. As that sense dissolves, which it does every night as reliably as anything in biology, you cease for a while to be you in the ordinary sense. You become something more like a process than a person. Breathing, dreaming, consolidating, restoring, present in a way that does not require a self to be present to. And then morning brings you back, reconstituted, largely continuous with who you were before, but subtly changed by all the work the night has done. This is the cycle. This is what nights are for. Let the awareness of yourself become softer. Not lost, just softer. Less sharp at the edges. The particular person you are, with your particular history and your particular concerns, can rest from being particular for a while. Just breath. Just warmth. Just this. One last thread to follow because it rounds out the picture in a way that feels important. We have talked about what happens in the brain at night. We have talked about the default mode network and the hippocampus and the thalamus and the arousal chemistry. We have talked about the evolutionary history that shaped the nighttime brain. We have talked about why the quiet feels loud and why thoughts become more prominent when the sensory world goes still. But all of this is description. It is the map of the territory. The territory itself is the experience of being a human being lying in the dark, somewhere between the day that has passed and the morning that will come, held by the familiar mystery of sleep. And that experience, whatever neuroscience can tell us about its mechanisms, remains in some way simply itself. It is one of the most intimate and universal experiences that human beings share. Every person who has ever lived has had nights like this one, has lain in the dark with thoughts they could not quiet, with memories arriving uninvited, with the particular weight of a body that wanted to rest but a mind that was not quite finished. Every one of them found their way through. The night passed as nights always pass. The morning came as mornings always come. And in between, something happened that science can describe but cannot fully capture. The brain and body did their slow, invisible work of repair and integration, and the person who woke was in some small but real way different from the person who lay down. You are part of this. You always have been. The long, quiet, human practice of lying in the dark and waiting for sleep. You know this practice from the inside, the way you know breathing or walking, from having done it every night of your life. Tonight is another instance of something very familiar. The brain hates silence at night, we said at the beginning. But perhaps that is not quite right. Perhaps the brain does not hate silence at night. Perhaps the brain simply fills silence at night, the way water fills a vessel. Not because it hates the emptiness, but because that is what it does. That is its nature. It finds the available space and it moves into it, and what it brings with it is the whole interior life of a person who has been living and thinking and feeling all day. The silence at night is not empty. It is full of you, and that, when you hold it gently, is not a terrifying thing. It is simply a true thing. You are here. The mind is here. The long, quiet night is here. And all of it together is enough. Sleep comes. Breath by breath it comes. Thought by thought, drifting past, it comes. Slowly, without effort, without notice, it comes. Just breathe. Just breathe. Sleep. If you enjoyed spending this time with the science of your sleeping brain, if it brought you even a little closer to rest tonight, please consider subscribing to Deep Science Sleep. It helps more than you might think, and it means there will be more nights like this one, more science explained slowly in the dark, more time to let the mind wander through the things that make us human. A like takes only a moment, and it means the world. Thank you for being here. Sleep well.